We are the only forensic medical center for the state of Maryland, and we cover the entire state from Western Maryland to Ocean City and the adjacent waterways. The law defines what cases that we're responsible for investigating, and that includes homicides, suicides, anything by violence, if it's a work-related injury. Basically, other than somebody who has a known medical condition is being treated by a doctor, and if you have cancer, heart disease, or something like that, where they know what killed you, then chances are you're going to come through this office. So it's going to include motor vehicle collisions and fires and drownings and shootings and all varieties of violence, and about 60% of the cases are natural causes. It's still the most common cause of death is cardiovascular disease, so it stands to reason that that's going to be the bulk of the people that come through here. We have a one-of-a-kind collection of miniature death scenes that were created in the 1930s and 40s by Francis Glessner Lee, a wealthy Chicago socialite who had an interest in forensic science. And they were created, they're basically a 1930s version of virtual reality, and they're still used for training today. The lessons that they hold are just as important today as they were in the 1930s. We have a training facility. It's called Scarpetta House. It was donated by the mystery writer Patricia Cornwell, and named after Kay Scarpetta, who is her protagonist. And it's a life-size facility. It looks, I guess, like a studio apartment, where it's a classroom, really, where the forensic investigation department uses it to train the FIs, and they stage death scenes in there, and with volunteers, living humans, wearing makeup to look like there's been some violence, and then they will go in and train to evaluate and assess the scene and to process it the way they would any scene. Obviously, the state has an interest in knowing why people die. So that's an obvious thing, that in many cases they may be criminal matters, or to rule out that it's a criminal matter. So that's a large part of it, so that the information that is generated is basically evidence that's used in court, may be used for prosecution. But we also serve as an early warning system for infectious disease, for example, so that when there's flu cases may be identified coming through here first, or environmental deaths, if there's hypothermia or hyperthermia. And when you hear of a notification that there's been heat-related deaths, and that information comes from here. So that's another thing that we do, is that we have that public health role.